Tuesdays, and I love Sarah in Brooklyn House Hotel. I'm just a hurricane high, and not a little too shy. Know how I wanted to say, know how they wanted to say.
Hello everybody, welcome to Dubai Future Horizons. My name is Hourglass. I'm going to pass it over to your host, Felix Zeltner.
Thank you, DJ Hourglass, and welcome to Dubai Future Horizons, presented by Dubai Future Foundation and Remote Daily. I'm Felix. I have the honor to be your host, and I'm live in New York City, where it's late night. And I'm so happy that many of you took the time to be here, to join us, especially from such amazing places, because this is the very first time we're hosting Horizons for the Asia Pacific region. And if Liz, our fearless producer, is bringing us back the screen where we all collect our respective places, you will see that New Zealand is in the house, Australia is in the house, Thailand, India, Vanuatu, of course, Western Australia, Gold Coast Australia, Canada, oh man, and Northern Virginia. Wow. Also, I see North London, where it's, I don't even know what time it is over there. Thank you for staying awake. And of course, we have amazing guests from exactly that region with us today. If you want to share where you're joining us from, whether that's California or Malaysia, please let us know right now. The link is in the chat to our Menti, or you can pull out your phone like I'm doing right now and scan that QR code with your camera, and then let us know. And welcome from wherever you are. And well, live on LinkedIn, our community is gathering as well. If you want to meet everybody, and if you want to join the stage later on, and you're watching the live stream right now, just come over to Zoom. The link is in the chat. And here on Zoom is where we bring together the community of futurist researchers and foresight practitioners from all around the world. If you're here with us, I encourage you, leave your camera on if possible, share your presence with one another. You're in for 75 minutes of futuring with live music, as you can hear right now, mindfulness, amazing guests, and towards the end, we open the stage to you, if you'd like to be a part of Horizons, part of our community share. As always, we have a big and complicated question. Our headline today is Futuring with Nature. Are we getting it right? Planetary health, indigenous futures, the Pacific perspective. All this will be a part of today's conversation. And to take us into the topic, and she got up early, let's welcome back from the Dubai Future Foundation, Isabella Pirolo. Isabella, good morning. What is good morning in Italian? Buongiorno? No, that's not.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. How
Hello,
are you?
good morning, good evening, everyone. Thanks once again for joining us at Futures Horizon.
Isabella, the
very
sun
good.
is just rising behind you, is that right?
Yes,
It's literally
it is.
sunrise in Dubai.
Exactly. I think you'll see different colors coming up from behind here very soon. But right now it's still a bit dark.
I have to ask you a question first that is not connected to the glass towers behind you. When was the last time you actually spent some time in nature?
Well, despite being here in Dubai in the middle of the city, we are just next door to the desert. And the desert is among the most incredible nature that you can have in the world. And 2 weeks ago, I was lucky enough to spend some time in the desert. That is such a humbling experience. It's like, I think it's the same feeling of standing at the ocean. And it's surprising because I think the first time I saw the dunes, like the very high and tall dunes, it was such an incredible experience. And
Wow.
also it's very dark. And here in Dubai, seeing the sky and the stars is not something that you have the privilege see much often. So being there, stargazing was just incredible. And seeing how much this environment that looks very, very still during the day gets to life at night, it's incredible.
Wow. I love how this question automatically spuns stories and beautiful moments. And so I'm going to toss this question to all of you. We would love to make a quick community share here and ask you, when was the last time you spent some time in nature? Again, you can access this through your phone by scanning the QR code or just clicking the Menti link in the chat. We'd love to share some moments here, some locations, or some memories that you might still have, as Isabella just said, gazing the stars, listening to the desert at night. And Isabella, to today's topic, futuring with nature, are we getting it right? What do you think? What would you respond to this big question?
Yeah, as you said at the beginning, as always, very, very big question. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion with Dr. Jemilah and Sarah that is coming up very soon. From my point of view, and I think also from the Dubai Future Foundation point of view, this topic is becoming for sure more and more relevant. In 2023, one of the tracks of the Dubai Future Forum was regenerating nature, and last year in 2024, this became futuring nature. And I think also this shift in wording shows to us how we have changed the perspective on when we look at the topic of nature and of saving ecosystems. So the getting it right part is not an easy answer. I think for sure the futuristic community, the foresight community, is embedding more and more the mega trends of saving ecosystem in its own reflection. There were big discussions past week at Davos where one of the main theme was nature. We will have here in Dubai the World Government Summit where once again climate crisis and climate will be part of it. So I think right now, if you do future studies or research, you can't just not have nature embedded in your thinking. And I'm sure that this is also something that will come up from the discussion right now.
Fantastic. Thank you for giving us that insight. And look what is happening here on our little storyboard. Swam in a river 2 days ago, cross-country
Nice.
skiing yesterday. I visited a garden in Putrajaya. Lush greenery and flowers surrounded me. Birds chirped and the air was fresh. I walk in my local parks a few times a week, also like standing barefoot on the tiny patch lawn outside my home. How beautiful is all of this? Thank you for sharing and for giving us these moments that are so personal, sometimes even intimate, to get a feeling for how important our surroundings are for us. And as you said, Isabella, also how important it can be to leave them if they're a little too human sometimes or too urban and venture out into nature. Why is it actually so important to you, Isabella, that the Pacific region specifically that is in the room right now, almost everyone right here is somewhat adjacent to the Pacific? Why is that so important to you that it is part of Dubai Future Forum?
Well, for us, it's important that every part of the world is part of a discussion. So the Pacific Islands and also the Pacific region, Asia Pacific region in general, is a part of the world we want to connect more and more. I'm saying last year, but actually a few months ago, the Dubai Future Forum was amazing to have conversation on stage with so many people representing the part of the world. And Dubai has this special position that can gather people from every corner. And, also this year we had more than 100 countries represented at the Dubai Future Forum. And many of the things that we discuss at the forum when it comes to climate, but also to tech, are existential questions in the Pacific Island. So when we look at the climate crisis, the answers that we get from that part of the world are so deep and they're so much connected to the way of living. And I'm sure Sarah will talk more about it, but also Dr. Jemilah. So it's very also different the perspective that we get. So for us, it's important that every corner of the world is in the discussion and Pacific region can bring into such a unique perspective of how we look at different topics when it comes to future.
A perspective that is much deeper and has often been overlooked by us in the so-called West. So I'm so glad now to introduce our speakers. And thank you, Isabella. I see that your room is getting lighter by the minute.
Yes.
What a beautiful way to start the session together. I'm so glad you're here with us and your team. And I would like to say hi to our guest speakers today because, as Isabella just said, their insights are so much deeper than whatever we could imagine in other parts of the world when it comes to futuring with nature. And first up is a medical professional with over 2 decades of experience managing crises in health, disasters, and conflict settings, 2 decades, everybody, of doing that. And she's currently the professor and executive director of the Sunway Center for Planetary Health at Sunway University in Malaysia. Welcome, just coming from the snow, from the mountains of Davos to now the tropical Chinese New Year. Happy New Year, Dr. Jemilah. Great to have you on Horizons.
Hi, Felix. Hi, everyone. I'm in Bangkok at the moment, where there's a large gathering of health professionals. So it's great to see all of you again.
Fantastic. And it's not an accident that you're wearing red colors. Is that right?
Yes, I'm half Chinese, and it's the Lunar New Year today. So for prosperity, we're encouraged to wear something red.
Fantastic. The year of the snake, if I'm not mistaken. And what makes you optimistic these days, Jemilah? You're just coming from this gathering of world leaders. You're now at the next gathering. You're a very, very busy person. We're so glad we got this hour with you. You're coming from so many conversations with people from all around the world. Anything that in particular made you optimistic over the last couple of days?
I think we are living in very turbulent times and really unpredictable part of our history. But the conversations I've had and what I've heard is a sense of we're not going to give up, despite all the geopolitical challenges. This is the one planet we have. We are all that's, available now to keep pushing. And I'm particularly inspired by young people who really feel that, they have a duty to keep, pushing on the subject of climate change, on planetary health. And for me, as an older person, it's the whole intergenerational responsibility that I have to ensure that my future grandchildren and my grandson, who is only 9 months now, has a better place to live in.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think our next guest can attest to that. She is the regional director for Melanesia at the Pacific Community, SPC, is based in Port Vila, Vanuatu, and is a regional public servant, has been doing this for many years, and prior to that worked for the United Nations in Afghanistan and also in the Pacific, also a global citizen that is back home and doing amazing things. Sarah Mecartney, it's so great to have you with us. Welcome on Horizon, Sarah.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. It's always quite humbling to see people give up their time to share stories together and to learn from each other. So I really hope that I've enjoyed it so far, but I get excited very easily, as many of you who know me do. But just really appreciate being able to join today. And again, thanks to Dubai Future Horizons and all futurists to be. Thanks.
Now I know that Jemilah just came from the snowy mountains. When was the last time you were in nature, Sarah?
This morning. I'm surrounded by it. I'm very fortunate. I've got the beach in front of me, a river behind me, and hills around. So they're a bit scarred at the moment from the recent earthquake that we had. But I think if I could just pick up a little bit on that thread of what makes us hopeful is watching nature heal itself and being able to listen to the different winds and the sounds and just taking that in as part of our journey.
Oh, fantastic. And I already see the chat starting to roll. Mary is calling you out, saying connecting with Sarah and the facilitators at the forum was an absolute highlight of my experience. And of course, Manish, Planetary Futurist, is already sharing here some recent experiences and practices that he has learned. Thank you, Manish. And I would like to invite now everybody who's in the room right now, whether you have a baby on your lap or a cat or a dog, don't worry, to come on stage with us and say hi to our guests. Yes, you heard that right. Let's just do a test for later when you actually come on stage. All of you. Now, switch on your camera if it's comfortable for you. Switch on your microphone right now and say hi in your favorite language to one another, to our guests. Be loud, be optimistic. Let's crash the Zoom call for a second. Hello, Horizons. Let's hear it from you out there. Hi.
Hola. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Hello. And Liz is going to hit the mute button for a second here for all of us. And I'm so happy that you're all here. Thank you for making your voices heard. Again, I will invite you later on to come on the stage and share in our community share moment if you like. Now, I would like to offer you a moment of stretching and relaxing before we start our conversation with Sarah and Jemilah. Here is for you a moment of mindfulness with our mindfulness guide on Horizons. Karis Timol, Karis, please take us away.
Thank you, Felix. All right, let's just get a little movement in. So moving your shoulders up to your ears and down your back, connecting your breath. So inhale, lift up, exhale, release. And then switching directions, moving at your pace with your breath. Beautiful. And then just allow your shoulders to settle down. And I want you to take your left hand on your right ear and just feel that stretch in the neck. Allow the shoulder to settle down. Maybe closing your eyes and taking a breath or two here. Beautiful. Switching sides, opposite hand, opposite ear. Again, feeling that nice little stretch in the side neck, allowing that shoulder to just fall down. Let it rest. Take another breath here, in and out through your nose. Beautiful. And then come back through center. Just release your hands on your knees and thighs, taking a few more shoulder rolls here. And then allow the shoulders to settle down your back. And maybe you close your eyes for a moment or keep a soft gaze down if that's comfortable. And I want you to take a moment and I want you to go someplace in this world, on this earth, the most beautiful place you can imagine. And notice any familiar sights or sounds there. Notice any smells, the culture. Notice what's around you. Now I want you to take a nice, slow inhale through your nose and a slow exhale from your mouth. Bringing your awareness into your body again, moving your fingers, your toes. If your eyes are closed, opening your eyes and coming back to this beautiful moment and preparing for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for taking the time to be mindful and to breathe. Back to you, Felix.
Thank you so much, Karis. And this is for you all. Futuring with nature also means futuring with your body. Here's some music. If you have anything next to your screen that you would like to cheer with, I have my little Ingwer tea, ginger tea here. Cheers. Welcome to Horizons, everybody. And now our guests are joining us. Dubai Future Horizons is here, and if you wonder who chose the music, it was our guests, of course. Sarah Mecartney and Jemilah Mahmood are our guests today on the show, and we're so happy to have them. And first of all, let's get out the maps, Sarah, because you already said it. You live in one of the most seismically active places on the planet, just survived a massive earthquake that was really, really impactful and killed people, displaced people a month ago. And many people are maybe not immediately able to find Vanuatu on a map, so we brought you one. And you can see how and where this beautiful chain of islands is located. Sarah, when you say when somebody asks you where you're from, in a bar somewhere around the world, what do you usually respond? How do you explain Vanuatu?
Like most people, it's the center of the universe.
Fantastic. In what way would you describe it the center of the universe?
Because it's home. I think home is the center of the universe for everyone. It's where we feel most connected to. It's for us in the Pacific, it's where our identity is anchored in. It's the familiar, it's the safe, earthquakes or otherwise. It's the known. And I think that's why Futures is so great, is that it takes us out of that known spaces sometimes.
We will look into how you future with nature with an indigenous lens in a second. Before that, I would like to also locate Jemilah, who's in Bangkok right now, but whose home country is also part of a massive change. I just saw that Malaysia is investing in helping its neighbor Indonesia change its capital to a completely different place, a different island called Borneo that your home Malaysia shares with Indonesia, Jemilah. It's such a fascinating, massive shift, and it has a lot to do with nature. It has a lot to do with how climate is changing. Do you think moving this capital of Indonesia to Borneo, the island you both share, Malaysia and Indonesia, do you think that's the right way of futuring with nature? Is that one of the ways to do it?
Well, Felix, first of all, the choice to move the capital was the Indonesian government decision. And part of the reason is that Jakarta, as you know, is very densely populated. It's also under very serious threat of sea level rise. There are parts of Jakarta, if you go to, you will see that, certain parts of the city don't exist anymore. So I think they didn't have a choice, but they had to move it somewhere where it would be safer to build an administrative capital. And I say administrative capital because a lot of the commercial activities will still be in Jakarta. Malaysia is the closest neighbor, so to speak. And in Borneo itself, you may be aware that 3 countries live on the Borneo Island: Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei. So it doesn't obviously it doesn't come as a surprise that Malaysia would invest and support Indonesia for many reasons. One is being a good neighbor, and also Malaysia now, particularly being the chair of ASEAN, as a collection of 10 countries that believe in the philosophy of prosper thy neighbor for a stable region. And last, but probably most importantly, is the economic opportunities that presents itself, being a close neighbor to what will be a large capital of Indonesia, one of the most populous countries in our region. Now, with that, of course, the risks are high because Borneo is a very rich, biodiverse island, but I see it also as an opportunity. I think here's an opportunity for Malaysia and Indonesia to join hands and show how green development can happen, how we can actually balance and find the balance between, collaboration between nature, sustainability, protection of the planet and health. And what it does mean is an envisioning and creating a sustainable future in working in harmony with natural systems rather than exploiting or dominating them. Now, easier said than done because, humans by nature want things fast. But I think coexisting with nature and aligning the human development with ecological processes to ensure that the health of the planet and for sure the health of future generations will be protected. So this will mean that we need to do much more on looking at urban planning, green urban planning, ecological services, looking at nature-based solutions, regenerative economics, and agriculture. So let's hope that, both countries will embrace this totally, support each other, but also hold each other accountable.
Yes.
To be able to do that.
Fascinating. It almost sounds like it is an example for futuring with nature. It can become one if the collaboration and if the right people happen to be together, and if, as you say, not only the economics are in the foreground the entire time. And it's a fascinating undertaking. I hope that it, goes in the way that you imagine, Jemilah. And Jemilah, I would ask you to now show your visuals that you brought to the session, because when I asked you, what is this planetary health thing? And of course you can Google it, and the AI agents will give you all kinds of answers, but it's great to hear it from you, because you have been part of this movement that I believe is around a decade old now, from early on. And you brought us 3 images to just help us understand what planetary health is and what it has to do with futuring with nature. The first image you're showing here, I believe, it's like a health check.
Yes. So this first image is an image of what is called the planetary boundaries. Now, in 2009, Johan Rockström and 28 scientists around the world presented what is called the Earth system boundaries, and basically how do you have safe limits for the human pressures that are exerted onto the planet. And these 9 items here are actually quantifiable. Now, since its inception in 2009 to this image came from last September, the boundaries that have been transgressed since 2009 have increased from 2 boundaries crossed to 6 last September. By the end of last year, we predict that the 7th boundary, which will be oceans, will be also crossed soon. So what it tells us is that we are living in rather dangerous times, because the Earth system protects us. And if we start transgressing, then we're going to get into more and more difficulties and more impacts on climate, on biodiversity, on our health as well. Now, planetary health itself came out of a Lancet commission in 2015, which is 10 years to this year, because of a sense of, I guess, awareness of the boundaries, but also frustration from a group of health experts and scientists who seem to want to send a very strong message across that you cannot have healthy human civilization without a healthy planet. The planet can survive without us. We can't without the planet, right? So I think planetary...
And I think, to just interject, your next visual is sort of an overview of how that all goes together. Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to make sure that we look at this while you're explaining it.
Yeah, so planetary health really is an interdisciplinary and a systems approach that focuses on the interconnectedness between the health of Earth's natural systems and the health of human civilization. And I mentioned civilization is not just human health, but it's also our culture, our heritage, our ancestry, our connection with each other. And I think it recognizes that it is the anthropocentric nature of how we as human beings have actually directly impacted the health of the planet. And therefore, if we don't have a multi-systems approach, we don't have behavioral change, we don't re-examine our values, we don't re-examine our relationship with each other and with the planet, then we will be crossing tipping points left, right, and center. So just as an example, in this image, you will see one aspect is climate change, one of the Earth systems that are measured. Even transgressing the climate change, we're seeing that there's so many health impacts from maternal child health, mental health, nutrition, trauma directly from flooding or heat, non-communicable disease spread, and infectious diseases. So I think just to also impress onto health practitioners that you cannot ignore the health of the planet when you want to treat your patient. And similarly, for policymakers, you have to remember that decisions that impact Earth systems will have an impact on health.
And Jemilah, you brought us a third visual where I think it becomes pretty clear this chain reaction that all ends in health. And while we are looking at this, and while we are seeing, and it even says down below, only health outcomes with most impact per hazard. So it's only a list of a few. When I mean, every policymaker who looks at this has to have a strong reaction, a personal reaction, emotional, but also a professional reaction. And I wonder, what are there, maybe is there a concrete example for how planetary health has already impacted policymaking, how charts like this and the one showed before have led to differences?
Yeah. So this comes from a very good report from Oliver Wyman last year that looked at the economic impact of climate change on health. And policymakers pay attention when you talk dollars and cents, right? I really highly recommend you to read this. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the things I didn't mention earlier with climate change is that we expect more than 1 billion people to be on the move and displaced by 2050. Now, obviously, people who live in island states like Sarah, they are seeing this, happening in front of their eyes, sea level rise and so forth. Now, let's see how can we move policies, by just pushing on the planetary health language. Let me start with my own country. As you can imagine, that I am constantly advocating and pushing very, very hard. And one of the things we've managed to do is, first of all, introduce the term planetary health into our 5-year development plans in Malaysia. So we are on the 12th Malaysia plan now, and the 13th Malaysia plan will be released next year, which will strengthen the planetary health language. On top of that, a group of scientists and policymakers came together to develop what I believe is the world's first national planetary health action plan.
Wow.
Pushes for systems approach to addressing policies, and health of people and environmental protection, biodiversity, pollution, plastics, you name it, right? This is going to be really tricky to implement. So in fact, next week, I will be back home with policymakers, with different ministries to say, how does this support our attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals? Planetary health is a goal, we want to get there.
Yes.
In the process, we will be able to push forward already the very, very difficult challenges for many countries in the world to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's one example. The second example I would say is Japan, for example, has started to bring in the planetary health language into its policies, the climate change adaptation plan, the health plans, and so forth. So I think, slowly it's being introduced. But I wanted to also point out something that we discussed earlier, that we have been supporting, the Melanesian government and also the lawyers from Australia that are representing them to bring a case to the International Criminal Court of Justice, which was heard last year, in really bringing the dimension of justice on climate and health.
So Malaysia leading, Japan following, and then you were referring to how this can now play out in international courts. And Jemilah, when we were still in the green room before the show, the first thing you said to Sarah, I have a question for you. How are things going on the international courts? How is this all playing out? So Sarah, when you listen to Jemilah hearing this right now and hear her question, what would you say?
I think, like I said in the green room, don't ask me too curly questions, hey? But it's just, I think it was awesome that was a question. To think that we can even get something like climate justice to the ICJ is just testimony into a shift in some of the importance of the goal of planetary health. It's also testimony to young people who have ideation, and testimony to people who listen. And I think that's such an important part of being in our part of the world, is the listening. Where we stop seeing stars, we stop hearing the bird's wing flap, we stop hearing the change in the tide because we're not listening. And I think bringing that ICJ, which was such a powerful collective action with everyone, including Dr. Mahmood there in the room, and supporting, bringing the science, bringing the spirituality, bringing the futures, bringing the dreams, bringing the pragmatic actions. We're all in this together. And we know that's a bit of a tired phrase, but it's the persistence that Dr. Jemilah also mentioned is we don't have a planet B, and those of us who are fortunate enough to remember childhoods filled with nature, fresh air, I saw in one of the comments, guaranteed to have snow for Christmas for some of you, and guaranteed not to be burned in heat waves for the rest of us. I think that is a bit of a change maker for those who might be hesitant to move from the extraction and economic popular approaches. But I'd also just like just been inspired by the meditation that we started with, is also to stop and think about all those of us who this year alone have gone through fires, who've gone through storms or through floods because of our transactions with nature. And I'm really sorry for those losses and for those pains. And I think that is also a call for us to be more nurturing. And I think my New Zealand friends in the room have a wonderful phrase for it. And I was going to try to avoid mentioning about the stewardship of our planet and our systems, and it's the kaikiakitanga. And hopefully when we get to the open stage, they'll be able to share some of that with us as well.
Wow. I want to thank you for saying all that and including so many that are also in the room right now. What really impressed me as a journalist, as a communicator, is how you actually brought these stories and these statements to life that just happened in the court. And I just shared in the chat, the SPC on Instagram is a fantastic place to see, coming from Jemilah, introducing the language, like what does that actually mean? And what are the stories that can be told? What is the collaboration looking like across the Pacific? And it's amazing how you in videos, in stories, are able to bring across what just happened in the court, and to a little more of the roots of what you do, Sarah. How would you describe futuring with nature from an indigenous perspective? What does that look like?
I can speak as a Melanesian from Vanuatu, but I think there's some commonalities across all our cultures and our indigeneity. It's a deeply embedded connection to the environment. It's deeply connected to the relationships that we have with others, people, animals, nature. I think in the Kingdom of Tonga, which is a Pacific country, they use the phrase tauhi vai, which captures the importance of culture and care of our relationships, not just with people, but with our planet and with the spaces between us. And if we take care of those spaces will take care of us. So I suppose I'm thinking of DJ Hourglass there. It's about the harmony. It's like, why are we causing that? I was always the kid at the back of the room singing well out of tune, making up the lyrics as I went. And that is the disharmony that we are causing to our planet. And I think Dr. Jemilah really raises an important aspect of it impacts our health. And maybe that's what's waking us up a little bit harder when our health is affected, when our homes are affected. It's calling for the need to future with nature.
Yes, and you have done and are doing so much work around futures literacy. You have done work with younger folks, intergenerational, as you said in the beginning. And the links that we just shared in the chat here are a powerful testament of that. As a journalist, as a host, I always love questions that futurists, that foresight practitioners ask. And there's some very powerful questions in there, in these links. For instance, what needs to be changed to live in a positive decade? You ask that, a lot of young people in your region. Or if you could speak with leaders of the past, what would they share? These are such powerful questions. And when I ask you, this is a community of practice of foresight practitioners all around the world. What is the framework, Sarah, that you're using? You said causal layered analysis is so powerful, and we even have our own visual for it, because what do we need an iceberg for in the Pacific? So here it is, and here's how you look at causal layered analysis. Can you explain to us why this is so useful for you to future with nature, to future in your region?
2 words: culture and context. We found when we were my organization SPC was using futures to develop a strategic plan that really tried to cap which planetary health is one of our key thematic areas of work, and it was trying to think differently. And we were very fortunate to do a bit of masterclassing with Sir Hale in Yatula, and who introduced us to the causal layered analysis. And what we found, first it sounded scary because we weren't exactly sure if it was casual or causal. And then people were like, but how was it different? What's it going to change? Oh, we'll just go with casual. It's so much easier.
It sounds much nicer. Right?
And then there was an iceberg, and sort of like, with the climate change, it's like, well, there's, icebergs are a little bit limited, but also how does it connect with people? How do we have a conversation with people who are never going to see an iceberg? I haven't seen an iceberg except in the movies. And we actually had one of our advisors, Leituala, remembered something from UNESCO work about the model of culture and how this can resonate. We're largely coastal people, we have reefs, and then we have deep sea, and how that depth, and then also being able to use metaphors to relearn our culture. To know everyone had a phrase, and it was just, well, when we made an assumption of how to get this across and be useful, not just as I think we work with scientists, they're like, oh, not this airy fairy stuff. But how do we make it connect? How do we make that connection? For some, for many who are very culturally attuned, it's through the heart. Through those who are more comfortable with science and data-driven decisions, it's with the head. And for those who would like to just get the job done, it's the hand. So this is basically a model of culture that connects the head, the heart, the hand. But as every politician will tell you, if you get the heart, you get the head and the hand as well.
Jemilah, anything to add to that? I saw you nodding a lot.
Yeah, I always remind myself and others that we are part of nature. Nature is not something separate from us. When we are no longer around, we go back to nature, right? Either we're buried or we're scattered, but we are definitely a part of it. And I just remind myself that nature doesn't need us, but nature is so loving and kind, like a mother that just keeps nurturing despite what we do to it. And, the power of nature to come back is just phenomenal. I think what, Sarah said is so true. It must begin with a culture that, that connects us, right? And therefore you protect something that you love and you're connected to. There was a question in the chat about where do we start and education. And I think that's very, very critical. What we're doing at Sunway is really trying to radicalize and revolutionize education. So I believe we are also one of the early, or maybe if not the only university that makes planetary health a mandatory subject for all undergraduates, that you cannot graduate from any course, not just health, whether it's culinary arts or communications or architecture or engineering, you need to pass a module on planetary health and sustainability, because we believe that, the future leaders need to keep this in the back of their head when they make decisions in future. And the second thing we're doing is really trying to make it also something young people can understand. So there's a very famous cartoonist or animator in the region, and they partner with us to produce what we call a planetary health playbook. So it's quite fun. There's a lot of activity you do with it. And it's specifically for 6-year-olds to 9-year-olds. So trying to catch them young again. I mentioned earlier about our Malaysian Economic Development Plan, but also our new upcoming national blueprint for education will have planetary health and sustainability embedded in it, because these skills will help us navigate the future that we are going to face, which is, as I mentioned, very, very uncertain and very, very tumultuous. But we will prevail because humanity, in the face of adversity, always sticks together and tries to push forward, right? And nature will be there nurturing us.
And there's already the question in the chat, of course, Jemilah from Viva, can we have access to this playbook? Is this available for the public?
I believe we can give you full access. Right now, one of the projects that I'm trying to do is to translate this into the 10 ASEAN languages. It's
Wow.
right now available in English and in Malay, or the Bahasa Indonesia similar. So we'll be very happy to send you a PDF copy if you drop us a line. Zibo is on the call. She can help.
You're a fantastic colleague, coworker, assistant Zibo. Thank you for making this happen. And yes, we would love to share this after the session today. And it is also a question that was one of the most upvoted from the community leading up to today in our Horizons WhatsApp group. How might we educate people on the need for ecocentric foresight? And now we just heard, Jemilah Sunway, you already have your own playbook and you are doing this in your own institution. I was wondering, Sarah, you also spend a lot of time in thinking on this. Have you found the way? Do you have a playbook? How do you do it? How do you educate?
Oh, good question. And maybe this is a future project. So thanks for the inspiration and future collaborations. I think this is perhaps a good lesson, is that we just assume sometimes that because we're indigenous peoples, or we have a connection, but our environments change. And so where we've taken our learning largely is from the family home. And I can only speak for myself, and I'd love to be corrected if there's something out there in the Pacific that we can use. But I think there's some cultural, we have a huge Pacific Arts Festival every 4 years. And largely when that's around the arts and culture, the art comes from nature. And so there is some learning, but I think for it to be truly intergenerational, then there has to be that education. There has to be the playbook, because we are losing. I know in my own country, we have healers, people who can use traditional medicines to heal certain things, but that information can only be passed to people who have the gift to honor and to take care of that knowledge. And so we've lost some of that information. So I think really just, yeah, I'd love to be able to work on something like that with others.
And the collaboration is already happening also here in the chat, Jemilah. There have been offers to translate it into Marathi and Hindi, into Filipino language from Sheila, from Viva. Thank you all, community, for sharing and offering your help here. I think, Jemilah, this playbook is going to make the rounds from Vanuatu to India and back, which is fantastic, to stop in the Philippines in between. And I was wondering, before we come to everybody sharing here on stage, I'm so fascinated, and it brings me back to what Isabella said in the beginning, how much there's to learn from you and how much there's to learn from you all the time. I would love just to be surrounded by knowledge from your region and the positivity from your region and the do it vibe from your region all the time. And I wonder if there is, for everybody who's listening or maybe watching this as a podcast afterwards, who's from other parts of the world, if there's one trend from your region that you would ask us to take into our lives wherever we are, what would that be? Sarah, I'm gonna start with you and then ask Jemilah.
I think the trend that I would love to share with the rest of the world is the trend of contentment and well-being. There is so much that we may not have in the Pacific compared to others' narratives, but we have a contentment and we have a peace and we have a harmony. But what's important is to continue with that interconnectedness.
I'm going to ask you for a haiku in a minute because I think this is calling for a haiku, and I know you have a wealth of haikus.
Got one in my back
Jemilah,
pocket, yes.
Jemilah, what would you say?
I think for me, I love what Sarah has shared, but I think the trend for me is, for my region, is a sense of shared responsibility. I really strongly believe that, having worked, as you mentioned, for more than 2 decades in crisis, I've seen the best qualities of people emerging in times of crisis. And I think we are in a crisis situation in the world today. And I think we have a shared responsibility to make things work and to make things better. And with that sense of purpose, right, you will find inner peace. And that's what we need a lot of now.
Your haiku, Sarah.
Oceans whisper peace, hands join an ancient wisdom, nature's heart beats strong.
And I'm tempted to say that's all the time we have today. Goodbye. But we won't. There's a whole community out there, hopefully interested in sharing. Thank you so much for that haiku. Thank you for the poetry. Thank you for the depth of this conversation. And we would love to hear, and thank you for sharing it in the chat so everybody can take it along and post it. We would love to bring you up on stage and hear from you, no matter if you're from the Gold Coast or from Bangkok or from London up there in the middle of the night. We would love to hear from you and learn from you, as this community is so rich of amazing people, how you include nature in your work, in your life, how you include nature in your work, in your life. Maybe you're already doing it. Maybe you're planning to do it. This is our big question for today. And how does this work if you're here for the first time? It's very easy. We give you some live music, so you have some time to think. And we give you some live music also to react. The react button in the Zoom menu on the bottom of your screen gives you a chance to raise your hand. So when you click on that button, you can click raise hand. And as you see in my left corner right now, I just raised my hand because I would like to join the stage and speak. So we would love to hear from you. We would love to welcome you on the stage together with Sarah and Jemilah and hear from you how you include nature in your life and work. I know some of you are planetary health futurists. Some of you are educators. Some of you are foresight practitioners. Some of you are researchers. And you're from so many amazing, beautiful regions. We would love to hear from you. And I already see the first hands going up. I give you about 15 seconds, 30 seconds more of music, and then we will start our community share on Horizons. And I'm going to start our community share today with, I think, the man who had the least sleep, next to our live stream specialist, Chris, who's in Munich. This is Manish, who has stayed up for us in North London, if I'm not mistaken. Manish, welcome to Horizons. Good to have you with us again. How are you including nature in your life and work?
Thank you, Felix. So the thing that I'm grappling with when I talk to especially corporations is about, if we want to move to a nature-based regenerative economy, how do I articulate what are the new business models? And it will be really interesting to hear from Sarah or Dr. Mahmood, because when I talk about let's move to a nature-based regenerative economy, most people in the private sector say, so Manish, that means it's going to take longer to make products, right? That means we're going to make less profit. That means we will lose market share. And so that's my challenge at the moment that I'm researching for 2025. What are these new business models that will enable this shift to this nature-based economy that we want to have?
Fascinating. Thank you, Manish. And I guess, Jemilah, as you're just coming from Davos, I'm putting this question to you first. Anything you'd like to respond?
I spoke on a very provocative panel with Richard Quest called LNG is Worse Than Coal. And I'm happy to share the link to that. But what we're trying to impress to, the audience is that, you know, we think of very, very harmful businesses as being profit-making and necessary because of energy poverty and so forth. But the data and the science shows that, number one, it's very harmful and more harmful than coal for LNG. But secondly, it's also a dead end because it's very expensive to produce and renewables are growing much faster than any of the polluting fossil fuels. So I think, you know, the message is that you can think of short-term, rapid, large gains, but it will be very, very short-term. So how do you now cultivate a thinking of, you know, patient economics, if you so to speak, and, you know, investment not just for one generation, but for many generations, and therefore requires ethical leadership. Ultimately, it is about leadership and good governance and so forth. The second, I think, is that we as scientists need to do a better job in communicating. I think a lot of the time it's jargon and people don't understand 1.5 degrees. How do you harness the power of storytelling? Because everyone, you know, as Sarah mentioned before, you touch the heart, the brain and the hand will follow. And I think we are not touching hearts enough. And for politicians that are usually the ones who make these short-term policies because of their position, they will listen when the hearts of the public are touched and demand change. So we have to have a good mixture of good evidence, good information, good communications that will push for good governance, and a bit of activism and anger and sense of urgency.
Does this help, Manish?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add? I mean, you're probably surrounded.
I was being relieved that Manish is satisfied with Dr. Jemila's. But I think just to add to it, I've you know, it's always nice when people want to have a business model. But I think, and I think it was actually Iman, he said, you know, why do we categorize things? You know, because I'm categorized from a small island developing state. Developing what? You know, it's somebody else's category. But coming back to the pragmatic of, you know, people need to make a living. And we've moved so far away from that mindset of, are we going to maximize our profits financially, to are we going to maximize our holistic health? And I think it's just coming back. And again, I can't really add very much more to Dr. Jemilah. It's about the heart, making it matter the most. And that can take time, but if you have that anger or that emotion or that frustration or that disengagement from the young people that we're seeing, I can't wait for that wave. I will dye my hair so I can look as young as those people who will make that change.
Thank you, Sarah. And Manish, thank you for bringing this very complex question to the stage here, and your own mission for 2025, for sharing how you are going to future with nature, and for being such an active part of the conversation today, Manish. Thank you for all the wisdom and all the resources you shared in the chat. And I would like to ask Andrew to join us on stage now. Andrew Gaines. Andrew, welcome to Dubai Future Horizons. How are you including nature in your work, in your life? What can you tell us?
When I go outside, I pause a moment and have the pleasure of just expanding my energy field and feeling my connection to all the life around me. I live in the Blue Mountains outside of Sydney, so I'm in a really good area. But loving nature isn't the solution. We have to change, I think, the system that drives our destruction of nature. And I like to show this cartoon to illustrate the system. You may have seen it. Industrial economic system devoted to growth. We all know that. So nothing really novel, except Tony Biddle made such a great connection. So the people that Manish talked to were quite right. The things we need to do to actually save our future ash is to slow the economy. It's not about profit anymore, it's about survival. And that's a hard thing for people to take, and that's our challenge, is to help people come to terms with that. And my group, Stable Planet Alliance, we have tools to do that. And our vehicles to reach the audience is, there are millions of groups that care. Let's inspire the members, if we can, to be what we call evolutionary catalysts or citizen communicators. So that's what I'm bringing to the party.
Fantastic. Andrew, please feel free to share the resources to your community in the chat so we can all read up on it. And please keep enjoying the nature around you. I love the butterfly right behind you. And it's great to have you with us today. And I'm going to bring a question from Riddy that came in the chat to you, Jemilah and Sarah, which could be a fascinating question to end today, about the scalability of the culture of the islands culture. Riddy is asking, thank you very much for this conversation. The islands culture is very interesting, reflects truly what and how much we have to work to bring change and cohabitat with nature, preserving our only planet. How do we bring this change, this culture at a massive level? And I'm wondering that too, because I'm sitting here on this continent that is steep and deep with its own problems right now. And I see so many of the answers that also Andrew and Manish just brought to the stage are in your region, Jemilah and Sarah. So how can we scale your culture, your wisdom? How can we scale it globally at a massive level, as Riddy put it?
I think we've already seen an example of that. That's last year at ICJ, the climate justice. That was culture.
Yeah.
That was the island of culture. That was a sense of unity. You know, and when I use the term culture, it's not exclusive. It's everyone has a shared sense of well-being and responsibility. Some of us need to relearn it, which I think is where the scalability comes from. But I think that's just, and the listening, as I mentioned before. And we've just heard about the question about the business models, or, you know, it's a model of survival. That's the shift, but it's also the opportunity to relearn what we might have abandoned for trying to become the fastest, the bestest, the greatest, rather than seek contentment and harmony. And I think just, again, having that pause, listen to the wind, and remember what your grandma told you. Wasn't that bad?
I think, to build on what Sarah has said, I think each and every one of us have our own cultures, our own faiths, our spirituality, but, you know, irrespective of what it is, the central values are usually at the core of it very similar. When I was contacted by a group of lawyers in Australia on the Melanesian case on climate justice, I don't live, well, Malaysia is a peninsula, but I've never lived on a small island, right? But I put myself in the shoes of someone who's there and what might impact me, and wrote the medical brief. And, you know, I was so honored that it was put in, they decided not to take it as an opinion, but in fact incorporate it into the docket for ICJ, which, you know, I felt part of Melanesia, you know, I felt part of the islanders. And I think that kind of sense of responsibility to your fellow human beings is fundamentally, that's what it is. That, you know, I remember in COVID, we used to say no one is safe until everyone is safe. And it applies to climate change. It applies to biodiversity loss and pollution. So I think that culture, how do you then take it to scale, is through the different mechanisms. You don't think big. Think about what you can start locally and then build it out. So it can be at local level, national level, regional level, and then global level, because global mechanisms are hard to turn around. They take time. But when a group of locals come together, a very good example is when the Kyoto protocols were rejected by the US government, 50 mayors signed up. Now, with the reversal of the fossil fuel, the drill baby drill phenomena, there are states and there are cities that are saying, no, we will impose. New York City, for example, is imposing a very high tax on fossil fuels so that whatever is earned can go into mitigation or adaptation and so forth. So don't underestimate that doing it at a local level and a national level can actually scale up. For me, living in the Southeast Asian region, I really focus a lot on ASEAN, because this is going to be a very large economy by 2050. It's going to be the supply chain of the world. And if we don't get it right in terms of business models and so forth, then we're going to be in trouble. So one of the things we are working on with our colleagues in the university is a shift fundamentally in how we look at businesses, from return of investment to return on values. And this will really, show that if you actually focus on return on values, you don't lose so much in the economic impact, but you also gain a lot in terms of long-term, but also societal benefits as well. And finally, I might add, is don't underestimate the power of faith-based groups. So I don't have it with me, maybe Zibo can share later. We brought together people of different faiths last year to talk about the planetary health. And we've come up with a faith charter, and we are going to launch it this year. We're very happy to collaborate with anyone who wants to collaborate with us. We want people to sign up. It's basically about doing the right thing, irrespective of whether you are part of an organized faith or whether you just are a spiritual person. But what we felt, and personally at my level, I'm hoping to write sermons for faith leaders, so that when they start talking in church or in the mosque and so forth, that they bring in this angle of the importance of environmental protection, of health, and so forth.
Wow. And while you were explaining this, there were, again, so many resources shared here in the chat from all across the Pacific, from Christina, from Michelle, from Andrew. And there's a beautiful testament also from Meredith. Sarah, to you, Meredith, who I believe is joining us from Australia, who is reminding me as a Westerner of the power of the mythical, and saying, in my facilitation, I use storytelling and I use myth and metaphor. And once you tap into the metaphorical and the mythical in people, they are willing to speak and listen more deeply and openly. And I think this goes back to you, Sarah, what you said, the island of culture model. And it's so powerful, Meredith writes, and necessary when asking people to speak to things like climate and environmental challenges, to tap into that. And I learned that from you today, that the mythical is much needed, and it doesn't need to be scaled because we all have it in us already. And I think that the Pacific Pathfinder that Christina just shared in the chat, this Futures Toolkit, is one of the things from the Pacific community, Sarah, that helps us. The tools, the papers that you have developed are so beautifully done and so beautifully designed and so deep that helps us tap into that. I want to thank you both so much for being here today. I feel like we could probably have an entire season just around this topic and just talk to people across the Pacific about futuring with nature, but I'm so glad that we got a glimpse today. And before we say goodbye, I would like to ask and invite a very special person to the stage who has been pulling the strings here in the background, because she's curating the Dubai Future Forum. She is, together with Isabella, part of the team that co-creates the content that leads us to amazing people like you for the Horizon session. And I believe if her family allowed for it, she is still in the room with us. Iman Al-Qadi,
I
good morning to you.
here. Hello, morning. How is everyone? I mean, am I allowed to say that this was my favorite Dubai Future Horizons? I don't know if I'm offending any other speakers from the previous Horizons, but definitely in the top 5.
This is your music, Iman, because you have an exciting announcement to make. The Dubai Future Forum is going to America and is rolling out in the middle of what's happening here at the moment, is rolling out its optimism, its positivity, its futures thinking in Austin at South by Southwest, presenting the 2050 track, the foresight track of the entire conference. Iman, are you inviting us all to come to Austin?
Of course I am. Obviously, goes without saying. I'll see y'all all in Austin. Am I allowed to say that? That was my horrible impression at a Texan accent. But yeah, Dubai Future Foundation is the track sponsor for the 2050 track at South by Southwest this year in Austin. Super excited. Aside from being a sponsor, we will also be, you can catch us at 3rd and Congress. We are actually building out a Museum of the Future activation space, complete with a talk space, as well as a place for people to hang out, experience some of our exhibits as well. So super exciting. The talks are, you know, it goes without saying, we've got stuff on nature. We also have one of Sarah's colleagues coming in to pair up with Samantha Matters as well on indigenous futures, all kinds of really exciting talks. And so I hope some of you at least will be able to make it to Austin, and feel free to come out and ask us questions and suggest things for the next Dubai Future Forum 2025 edition, which I can tell you already is on the 18th and 19th of November. So countdown has started.
And kudos to you for bringing the Arab world, the Pacific world to Texas. They have a lot to learn there from you. And Manish just said in the chat, next time we should have the voice of nature in the Zoom call too. What a beautiful idea, Manish. Thank you. And thanks to all of you. I'm inviting you all to come on stage one last time and say goodbye to one another, and to our amazing team here, Liz, Jade, Jhalisa, aka DJ Hourglass, Chris, who created the live stream, and of course, Iman, Inas, Abdullah, Yumna, the entire Dubai Foundation team, Isabella, and just have your voices heard, your optimistic voices, your positive voices in your favorite language. The link for our WhatsApp community, where we are going to share all the links that were shared today in one WhatsApp, is also in the chat. And of course, you can find us on YouTube, where this podcast will land in a few days, and where all the past conversations have been. This was our first season of Dubai Future Horizons, and the first session in the new year, the first session for the Asia Pacific community. So many firsts here today. And now I would love to hear your voices. Thank you for being a part of this. See you again soon. I'm Felix with the Remote Daily team, and this is your final song. Let's all go off mute together now. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.
Rono, thank you
Bye,
all.
Appreciate it.
See you all. Thank you.
Bye, all. Thank you.
Sarah.
Bye.
Thank you, Jemilah. Made it to